Girls and guys, this is going to be such an interesting podcast episode to share with you today because I am joined by Zoe Charif, and she is an author of a book called Love Can In Fact Be Calculated. And she is all about being able to move away from love being this magical spiritual thing that just happens to us and starts to ask us to think about love as a way that can be defined by maths. And this is an idea I probably wouldn't have entertained years ago because I am a romantic and I love to love. And the fact that love is not this magical fairy dust rainbow thing is not an idea that I would like to entertain. But that's why I really wanted her to come on the podcast to understand a different perception of what love actually means and how we can find it in our lives. What if love isn't magic at all, but math? And in the episode, this is what we are exploring together: how to redefine love as something we can actually calculate. And she gives us that code to help us choose a relationship that actually lasts and something that is going to heighten and accelerate our lives rather than put us in those anxious spirals. And we dive into attachment styles, modern dating complexities, and whether compatibility can actually be created and not just found and stumbled upon, as a lot of us do typically tend to think. Such a fascinating one. So, if you are curious about whether there is a smarter way to approach love, this is an episode that you are going to really enjoy. So, let's get into it. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Relationship Rehab Podcast. I am so honored today to be joined by Zoe Charif. She is going to take us on a journey today. Let me tell you a little bit about Zoe Charif. She is an author, entrepreneur, and coach, and she is on a mission to redefine how we think about love. She is actually giving us a blueprint for it. I know, I'm excited too. As the author of Love Can In Fact Be Calculated, Zoe has spent nearly 2 decades decoding the patterns of human attraction, pulling from a background in criminology, data analytics, and a relentless drive to challenge everything that we've been taught about relationships. Oh, this is going to be so juicy. Zoe was born in Afghanistan, raised in Vancouver, Canada, and is now based in Orange County, California. And Zoe brings a rare blend of emotional depth, analytical precision, and lived experience to her work. And her framework isn't just theoretical. It's coachable, actionable, and designed to help people transform how they choose, build, and sustain relationships. I'm already so excited. Her work is a wake up call. Love isn't magic. Oof. It's math, psychology, and emotional mastery. Outside the relationship space, Zoe is a powerhouse entrepreneur. Yes, girls. Yes, love an entrepreneur. The founder of Business Plans USA, helping startups and established businesses secure funding and scale with precision. Wow, you are an all rounder, Zoe. I am so excited to have this conversation with you and help people find aligned love or aligned success, as you
Mhm.
put it, and actually break the code on love. So,
Mhm.
without further ado, Zoe, welcome onto the Relationship Rehab podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for the intro as well.
Absolutely. All right, where do we start? So, I want to just get right to it.
Let's
I want to know what you're all about. Where did this come from? Where you got to the point where you're like, you know what? Screw chemistry. Let's look at data. Let's look at numbers. So, what brought you to studying relationships using formulas and data?
Yeah. So back in my early 20s, I was cheated on by someone I was very much in love with, and I was completely blindsided. So I needed to understand love, and I was essentially scouring the internet. I had a ton of tabs open. I'm like, I just need to get it. Why was I cheated on? Why did I not see it coming? Also, I love this man, and I thought he loved me. So I came across one article, and the author wrote, "You can't fall in love with someone unless they're a match." So it got me thinking. I'm like, was I not a match to him? Is that why I was cheated on? And next step was, okay, well, how do you calculate a match? How do you figure that out? And that's how I essentially developed a theory. And with that theory, I kept it in my back pocket for, I guess, 20 years now. And I applied it to my relationships. I applied it to my friends' relationships. I applied it to my parents' relationships. And every time I saw a pattern that I could predict whether two people would stay together or not. So, about 6 years ago, I decided to really put my energy into it and to start spreading the word and my voice in terms of, there is something valid here, like we need to look into this. So back in 2020, I took data analytics, and at the end of the program, I invited a few students to join me in a group project where we could really analyze the data. So we started with 80 surveys, but it confirmed through data that you can indeed measure love and measure and predict the longevity. Beyond that, so that was back in 2020 when I started writing it, but in 2024, I added more surveys, right? More survey takers to make sure that I had a strong distribution, right? Across all ages, across genders, and essentially the results were the same, that you can predict a match, and that if it is a mathematical match, you're more likely to stay together.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is so interesting. And already my curiosity is like, what is the formula? I'm
Okay,
sure we
let's get
all
into
want to
it.
know.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Give us the secrets now.
Okay. First and foremost, you have to evaluate yourself in terms of how you feel you approach life. This is a mathematical assessment of self worth. Okay. And this is how you do it. You pick your top 5 values, top 10 values, whatever your values are. Okay. You measure yourself against each value, and then you tally up that score and you come up with a percentage. Okay, so for example, so on my top 10 values, I might give myself an 80%. And the 80% is essentially how I measure up to my own standards in terms of how I show up as a human. Okay, now that's the self score. To measure a partner score, you have to measure them against your values, not their values, but against your values. Besides that, you also have to measure them for attraction. So, what you're doing is you're measuring the partner values score and the partner traits score. If you're a highly emotional person, you're likely going to put more emphasis on the traits. If you're more of a practical person, you'll put more emphasis on the values. But just for the sake of this example, let's assume someone is 50-50 and they take both into account. Okay? So let's say the person that they're evaluating, whether it's a spouse or a potential partner or an ex, doesn't matter, right? You calculate the partner value score. Let's assume in this case it's 90%. And then you calculate the partner traits score. Let's assume in this case it's 80%. The average between the two is an 85%. Now, if you are an 80% and your partner, that person that you evaluated, is an 85%, this shows that this is a really good match. It shows that there's admiration. Now, you can go ahead and bring it down to an 80%, right? So even if that person scores 80%, it's still a match, but the data shows that the more quote unquote perfect relationships, or where you're more likely to put an effort into a relationship, and that effort is being received by the partner, is when they're slightly higher than you, slightly higher. So that's essentially how you measure a match. First, you measure yourself, then you measure your partner, both on values and traits. You average out that score and you compare it to your score. The goal here is for it to be an exact match, but even better would be slightly above you. That's admiration. And that means that you're going to project that fulfillment and the feeling of feeling lucky into the relationship, and they will feel that. So then they are likely to project the same into the relationship. Hence, you stay together and you're fulfilled.
Okay, so interesting. So let me repeat what I think I'm hearing. So each value and trait has a specific number.
Mhm.
Would that be correct?
Yeah.
And so let's say the value of freedom has a number of 20?
Okay.
Like I am not mathematical at all. Can you explain like how the scores work?
Sure. So let's assume I choose a top five value. Okay, my top five values. I can say that each one is worth 20, right? So that's a percentage, 100%,
Oh,
right? So let's assume
right.
freedom. I want to score myself in terms of how free I really am, right? And that could mean anything, right? It could be financial, it could be like, traveling, it could be whether you have a voice and you feel comfortable using it. It could mean so many things, right? But for freedom, for me personally, I feel like I'm a solid like 18, right? Now, my next value would likely be family. I personally feel like I have strong family values. I would give myself an 18 there as well. The next one, career to me is important, right? I would give myself a score there. Purpose to me is important. Spiritual factors to me is very important. I believe in God. I believe in angels, right? So I would tally up that score now, right? And that's how I get it. The thing is, you don't need five values. You can pick your top 10 values. In fact, I do top 10 because the more I do these calculations, the more I realize I actually am complex. Right. No, I don't know if complex is the right word. I just have standards. I know what I like. You know what I mean? And the more I get to
Yes.
learn about myself and how I perform in relationships, the more I realize I admire and respect traits in other people that I hope that I can also bring into my own life, right? And nurture within myself. So then I'll add that as a value. But yeah, so essentially that's how you calculate your self score.
Right, got it. So you score each value, let's say there's 5 out of 20, and then it sounds like it's like aligning your values with the other person's values and if they match. Would that be
It's
correct?
more aligning how they fit within your own values. You're not necessarily meant to, it's obviously good if you align to each other's values. It kind of doesn't matter because all that really matters is how they fit within your own values. If both of your values are the same, perfect, that means that you're both working on the same things, right? But it doesn't like for example, what we found was that the top five values from women, clearly there was overlap with the men, but they weren't all the same, right? So women tended to value career more, whereas men tend to value education, right? In their partners. So with that said, it like yeah, obviously if there's overlap, that's excellent, right? And us being humans, we typically conform. We typically have like very general standards, right? But it doesn't mean they have to be the same. All it means is if I have a value for freedom, how does my partner fit within that value? But his value might be something completely different, like communication manners. And the question is, how do I fit within his value?
Right, got it. I understand now.
It's
And
very
I'm so
visual.
curious.
I feel like if I had it up, you know what? You're giving me food for thought. Next time I come on a podcast, I'll be like, here's
Yeah, we need a demonstration. We need a
a
whole
demo,
demonstration,
a
especially as
demo.
visual learners.
Yeah.
But I would love to know, how does this method look in practice? Because it sounds great. It sounds like something that we see a lot, like when we put our names into an app and it comes up with a percentage score. Obviously there's more to it. You have a lot of data and method and frameworks around it. How does it look in practice when you're working with clients and people in regards to this? Because I guess love has very much been something that we have seen as purely emotional or even spiritual, that
Mhm.
we feel the energy and the connection with people.
Mhm.
How can we bring this approach into our world when we come to deciding whether this relationship is something that we should pursue or not pursue?
Yeah. I really like this question, but let's back up a tiny bit in terms of why us as humans, we feel like there's such a strong spiritual component to love and relationships. First of all, I'm highly spiritual, so I don't want to dismiss that at all. With that said, we are also human and we are bound by brain, by a reptilian brain, which is another way to say we are bound by primal instinct, right? Beyond that, we have hormones, we have neurochemicals that spark when something feels good or feels right. Now, the question is, why does something feel good and feel right? Everything is in the mind. Everything is an evaluation and everything is perception because we are bound by this body. Okay, we are not pure spirit. We are very much in a physical body with primal instincts. So, if you look at evolutionary psychology and Darwinism, the survival of the fittest, right? And essentially pairing with a strong mate so that you can create a strong offspring. So if you were to translate that, you're essentially evaluating your partner and you're asking yourself, if I was to mate with this partner, would I create a strong offspring? Now, obviously, these are very unconscious patterns, right? We don't realize that we do this, but this is our primal instinct, right? We're literally driven to procreate. So with all of that said, this is a formula that can evaluate what your mind is doing. Your mind is looking at values, it's looking at ability to survive, and then it's looking at traits, which is attraction, right? So based on those two scores, the mind then evaluates and says, is this a match? If it's less than a match, you are not likely going to be fulfilled in that relationship because your hormones and your neurochemicals are literally saying, no, this is not what I want. And it doesn't mean that if you feel that in the first 5 minutes, that's how you'll feel within an hour or within 2 days or within 2 years, right? Clearly, things change, perceptions change, right? But this is all to say there's a reason why we have these butterflies. There's a reason why we have this gut feeling and obsession. It's not spiritual, in my opinion. Your angels are not asking you to be a runner and self-harm. Your angels are asking you to self-love. That's I sincerely believe that. So I do believe that there are people that are on this earth, soulmates, if you will, that will teach you lessons, right? But the lesson is not self-harm for the purpose of love. The lesson is, are you fulfilled? Are you being a good person? Are you self-loving? You see what I mean? So that's where I would like to start, where we need to really take a step back in terms of putting too much emphasis on spirituality when it comes to love and relationships. Now, the next step, making smart decisions. There's a personality type that I identified called the extreme emotional. And I can speak to this because this was me. The extreme emotional would put more emphasis on traits than values. And the calculation takes that into account. It'll ask you, are you a more emotional person or are you more practical, right? If you put more focus on attraction than values, it'll break down real quick and you will get your heart broken and not understand why. And then you will seek online for validation that there's a meaning here, right? And this relationship couldn't have been meaningless because the emotions are just so strong and angels and all of this. Okay, I hear you. Or there's a slight emotional dysregulation here. And again, I can say this because I fell in this pattern and I see a lot of people falling in this pattern, and it's good to call it out, get a bit of self awareness so that you stop doing that because you're going to hurt yourself. If you find in your calculation that, let's say, a past partner that you have such a hard time getting over, right? And you're seeing the calculation, you see that you put more focus on their traits and attraction rather than values, and they don't even fit your values, that's actually you not being balanced in terms of how you make your decisions. And once you gain that self awareness, you're going to see, oh man, like they're not even good enough for me, right? Why would I do this? And by the way, I got over a breakup 5 years ago exactly like that. I realized I was infatuated. Infatuation means that I put this person's score like way up here and mine way down here, and way too much focus on traits. I'm like, what am I doing? And then once I realized, okay, if I was to balance this out from the get go, I would have realized it wasn't going to work out from the get go. So that's one thing. Sorry, I'm kind of going, I'm rambling. So let me pause here and let
No, this
you.
is so good.
Good. Okay, you want me to keep going?
Absolutely. I'm resonating so much with this particular character that you're describing, the
Yeah,
overly emotional.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
know,
continue, please.
okay, okay. Let's get into attachment styles. Anxious attachment. I'm willing to bet that if you ever fell into an anxious attachment style, that's not who you truly are because you're not like that with everyone. There happened to be that one person that just sparked something in you that triggered your anxious attachment. What may actually be happening is you've put this person on a pedestal and now your hormones are like, oh, yeah, that's the one. We're not going to let this one go. No, no, we need to snap out of that. You just need to find someone who's an exact match or just slightly higher, not overly high. And if they are overly high, that means that you're going to fall into patterns of self sacrificing and infatuation. And by the way, the analytics are showing that they will not stay with you unless they assume that you're either a match or perfect score 4% higher. If you fall into patterns of infatuation or self sacrificer, you're pinging their subconscious and saying, you're better than me. You don't want to do that. You're going to lose that person. What you need to do is be secure, strong in your self worth. And that will put a ping in their subconscious and say, I am good with you, without you, I am good. And that is what's attractive. So, for all you anxious attachers, and I can say this because I was there, okay? So, that's why I'm speaking about it very passionately, okay? It's because I managed to get myself out of that. Once you start to identify why you're feeling so attached, once you start to rebalance those scores and realize, no, I don't need to be infatuated with this person. I can admire them but not infatuation. You know what, even better, I admire myself. I have strong self-worth. If they want to act like an avoidant, f them, f them. Talk
This is
about the
all amazing.
avoidant.
I can see it in my own patterns as well. When I got completely infatuated with a guy who we are not aligned in values whatsoever, but like you said, we prioritize that attraction, and he was so attractive.
Yeah.
I put him on his pedestal, and everybody wanted him. All the girls wanted him. And then it became the competition of who was going to be chosen. And
Mm.
I think that's when we fall into these traps of what we call the attachment loops.
Mhm.
And when we talk about the anxious and the avoidant in terms of them being not very compatible partners, but why they're so magnetic is to each other is because they're triggering each other's beliefs about themselves and others. Like the anxious has a low sense of self and a high perception of others, whereas the avoidant has a high perception of self and a low perception of others. So that goes exactly as you were talking as to why they clash and why they don't actually end up working out for the long term, because you're just triggering and validating shadows and subconscious limiting beliefs, I guess, about the world. So when we work towards being more securely attached and we choose partners that are also vibing on that level, that this can then come into a full circle, right? We can start to combine this data focused approach with more of an emotional intelligent approach for an all-rounded amazing perfect match.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And you're right. Essentially, what you just described is a chapter in my book and what I call the yellow zone in relationships. So, when you have a red zone, you have two people with low self scores that become a match. Okay. And that's highly toxic and they don't leave each other alone. And they think they can't do better, but they're just anxiously attached to each other. That's red zone. Okay. A match of two people with low self worth. You have the green zone, which is a match of two people with high self worth, and then there's the yellow zone. That's when there's a mismatch, right? This is where infatuation falls in, anxious attachment styles, avoidant attachment styles. In terms of this framework, when you're looking at an anxious avoidant, here's what, in my analytics, this is what it means. You have someone with a low self score that has now matched with someone with a high self score. And by the way, this can be with a single person but shift in relationships. So it doesn't mean that you're stuck there. You can actually, even if you start with yellow zone, you can eventually move up to green zone. Sadly, sometimes you can move down to red zone, right? But in terms of what you're describing, the avoidant versus the anxious, it's yellow zone. It's one person who thinks they can do better and it's two people who agree with that. because this person is pinging in the brain of the high scorer, you're better than me. And now the high scorer is saying, well, I kind of agree. You're putting it in my brain. You're showing me, right? So here's the thing, avoidant attachment styles. Here's how I understand in the way that it's being described, and correct me if I'm wrong. It says that the person can have strong feelings, but then they get scared and then they start to avoid those feelings and they start to sabotage. Okay, that could be true, but also it could be true. And we have to just be honest with ourselves that they think they can do better. And the reason it's on and off, the reason they keep coming back and leaving is because you're probably scoring high in their traits, but the relationship is not strong enough to, in other words, the values are not high enough, the values score is not high enough for them to fight for you. That's probably what's happening. The trait score is there, they get their fix, whether that's a date, whether that's a laugh, whether that's sexual, whatever it is. They get their fix and they're like, but I know it's not going to work out. Why would I stay? I'm going to peace out for a bit and get space. And then, of course, that will trigger anxious attachment style. Of course, we are all human, especially when sexuality is involved, especially as a woman. Sexuality is very sacred to us, right? And even
Oh, yeah.
for the ones who can detach, I hear that, in my opinion, subconsciously, it's absolutely sacred. As much as you feel you can detach, there's something in your subconscious that's being affected. Now, let's assume you give the most sacred part of you, and then the person says, okay, bye, peace. I'll be back when I come back. It's like, of course you're going to become an anxious attachment style. Of course. But that's the thing. Like, I think it's literally just because, and we have to be honest with ourselves, we did not score what they needed us to score for them to fight for us. You probably scored high in traits, they got their fix, but you're not scoring high enough in values, so they're like, okay, bye, right? And this does not mean like bend to fit their values. F that. What that means is work on your self worth so that if something like this happens, you have the strength to say, you are not good enough for me. My top value is dependability, and you suck. You totally sucked. And I'm not doing this again because I have strong self worth, and you're not good enough for what I need. Boom. Right? Watch how
Woo!
fast you will literally detach. Just watch. And I can say this because, knock on wood, I've been through it. I did it. And I'm like, wow, this was really enlightening. And I feel so good that I'm truly not thinking about this person because they're literally not good enough. Their score is lower than mine. I'm a rock. I show up as a rock. You sucked. And this is not good enough for me. And that's the mindset that as anxious attachers, we all need to take on. It's evaluating your values and making sure that you're putting that emphasis into your formula and into your framework so that you don't get hurt and you make wise decisions, because it's very easy to think that God wanted it a certain way or angels, right? Maybe as a lesson, but definitely not to self-harm. No spirit guide wants you to self-harm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess it's a really great tool to go along other things like belief reprogramming is what came to my mind, because I remember being in that space where I really tried to talk to myself like I'm so amazing, I'm so incredible, I'm such a freaking catch, but underneath all of that I didn't really believe it. I still they stayed on the pedestal, and I still dealt with a lot of abandonment fears and rejection fears and taking all of this personally. So where I'm going with this is like I'm hearing you and playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, because I
Yeah.
have been in the space where, let's say I did use your formula with a guy that is avoidant, but I'm absolutely obsessed with him and I'm so in love, or what I think is in love, and I'm going to test out the relationship. So, well, first and foremost, a lot of anxiously attached women, people don't even know what their values are.
Mhm.
That really shocked me.
Mhm.
When I do value workshops and I do a lot of this work with my clients, and I'm like, what are your core values? They don't even know what they are. So maybe that's where you need to start, is actually figuring out what your values are.
Mhm.
So as I was listening to you, I'm like, okay, I'm going to apply your formula to the guy that I'm obsessed with, and we're not a match. Now, in my anxiously attached brain, I'm thinking, I'm not accepting it. I'm instead you seeing it as a challenge, challenge accepted. Now I'm going to mold myself to fit his values,
Mhm.
or I'm going to try to change him to fit my values. And there's almost like this urge to try to fit a square peg in a round hole. We do this because we want to sustain the relationship. We don't want to accept that it's not a good match.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Zoe, is there a way that we can use this tool? Yes, it can be used to assess relationships and provide insight. Can it be used for the relationship to ourselves to improve our self worth in this area?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the breakup that I went through 5 years ago, I applied the formula and I realized that my values were not what they should be. And also, I was viewing him in rose-colored glasses because I had given him a high score for dependability, which isn't true. He wasn't a rock. I was just infatuated, and I was just taking these crumbs and thinking, "Oh, this means so much, right?" Here's the thing. This is a tool, but if you're not working on yourself to heal those patterns, or there's at least a desire to heal, the tool won't, it can't be used. I'm not going to say it can't be used for good. You can always try it and at least gain the self awareness. But if you're self aware that you have these anxious pattern attachment styles or anxious attachment style patterns, but you still tell yourself, but I'm still going to give it a go. In my belief, that's just a lesson that you're going to have to overcome because the numbers are there. So I also offer questionnaires. If the questionnaire shows that you're an extreme emotional, in other words, you're more prone to the anxious attachment style, you still choose because at this point we're talking decisions, right? As humans, although we're bound by our primal instinct, we have the choice to make a decision. By the way, I want to share something with you. So I say I used to be anxious or whatever, right? The reality, though, is that my subconscious has not changed a lot. What's changed is my ability to make decisions because I told myself I refuse to do this. Zoe, you're going to hurt yourself. I'm in my late 30s now, and I was in my mid 30s when the situation had happened. And I remember just being so broken. And I remember seeing the life sucking out from and draining from my face and my youth just being sucked right out. I was drinking, I wasn't eating well. I was not great. And I was thinking to myself, if I keep doing this, like I'm gonna hurt myself. So that's when I made the decision to no longer allow these patterns that I have to take over and take hold. So, backing up a tiny bit, I gave this analogy to someone. How do you change an attachment style? Well, let's really think about the subconscious. Samantha, can you help what you find funny? Can you help it?
No, I guess that's part of the conditioning, right?
Exactly, exactly. If something funny happens, you're gonna laugh. It's such a instinct. Well, that's what attraction is. It's an instinct, right? To repattern that is not easy. It's not like your values where you choose to make certain life decisions. To repattern what you find attractive, I'm not gonna say we are what we are, but it's just so hard to change that. So if you know, that's where decisions come in. We are intelligent beings. So you still have free will. You still have free will. If you don't choose to put a stop to your pattern, the God will keep on giving you these lessons until you learn it.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a really great tool for anxious attachers because we do very much live in our emotional brain.
Mm-hmm.
We see love definitely as something spiritual, that God has sent this person and this is our one person, this is the one. And I always talk about archetypes, and there's the specific archetype of the anxious attachment. I call it the hopeless romantic.
Mhm.
We love love, and we don't want to know about data and numbers when it comes to love. It goes so
Mhm.
much against that romantic perception of what we have about love, that there's an air of mystery to it, and it's something that is unexplainable. So, in that regard, this tool can balance out the emotional brain with the rational brain, because I do believe we need both. We do
Absolutely.
need a certain level of chemistry and a spark and attractiveness, like you said, but we also need discernment. We need effective decision making. And when we have tools to be able to navigate and manage both sides of the brain and the body and the soul,
Mhm.
then we can arrive at a more balanced decision when it comes to the partner we choose. Because let's be honest, guys, this is our partner that we're talking about. This is the person that is going to hold you through those deep and dark times when your parents pass away. I don't mean to be morbid, but it's going to happen.
100%.
When you give birth, when you lose your job, like all of these like very serious and hard life challenges that we all go through. Who is the person that we are choosing at the end of the
Exactly.
day to hold us up? Can we
Exactly.
hold ourselves first and foremost through this? But I think sometimes we do need to take the romance out of love a little bit, just a little bit, so we're not like swimming and drowning in rose tinted glasses, and actually seeing that our choice of our partner is up to us. We do have that. I used to hear it a lot from my mother of you can't help who you fall in love with. And I used to believe that. And when we believe that, then we completely disempower ourselves and we're now a reaction to the
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
Like, as long as he likes us and he's giving us attention and he doesn't hit us, then he's fine.
Mhm.
It's all good. Like, and that's what we define as love. But
Yeah.
so, yeah, I love that we're balancing this out with this conversation.
Absolutely. But with that said, the framework also calls out not putting enough emotion into relationships because if you're more values focused, so the emotional versus the practical, you have the healthy emotional, the extreme emotional, which we've already talked about, and you have the healthy practical and extreme practical. So the relationships who are currently together fall mostly in the healthy emotional bucket. What that means is if you're too practical and you're only looking at values and not enough at attraction traits and chemistry, you will also shoot yourself in the foot. You will not be fulfilled, right? So the point is to either be a healthy practical, right, or a healthy emotional. But if you're completely bypassing emotion and saying, no, it's okay, they're steady and they're a rock and they're safe and whatever. Yeah, but if the chemistry is not there, you're gonna be bored. What are you guys gonna talk about? What about the sex? Right? You're gonna lose that passion, you're gonna lose that spark. So by no means does the framework say do not pay attention to the chemistry, right? But it does evaluate chemistry. And it does tell you this is where it's coming from. It's because this is what you're typically attracted to, right? And I do believe that angels, God will put people on this earth that you get to connect with. And then it's up to you whether they fit the framework in a positive way or if you could see a train wreck coming from a mile away. And that's the point, right? Even if there's attraction, the goal is to not let it spiral. If you're already seeing that it's going to be a train wreck, which it should help you determine, to be honest with you, then it's like, okay, I see this from a mile away. I'll just friend zone you and we'll keep it there. We're good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm curious, what is your mission in bringing this tool to the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's so open ended, but here's the thing. I think that, God, it's so cliche. I think love is clearly very important, right? That saying all you need is love or love will make the world go round. Like I think that the basis of everything is love. Even people who are power hungry, money hungry or whatever, I think the basis is that they want to be loved. I think that the basis of us being humans on this earth is either to love others or to self-love. I think love, in fact, all songs out there are about love. There's something about the humans, right? About humans, the humans. There's something about humans where it's very much within our wiring to understand love, define love, act with love. And yeah, so unfortunately love has been jaded for many of us because as humans we are also very dark creatures, as we can see right now with what's happening in the world. There's absolutely a darkness there, right? So when love is tainted by survival, when love is tainted by fear, by harm, whether it's self-harm, harm to other, like, it just really skews and taints our understanding of it. Now, growing up in a loveless house or in a dysfunctional house, you have once again a very tainted understanding of what love is, right? And then you enter in relationships that are not truly loving, and they can be very toxic, they can be very uh, emotionally abusive, God forbid physically abusive, right? And the goal truly here is to get back to our basic, our basic understanding of love, which is self-worth. So the numerical assessment of your self-worth here is the self-score. If you have a strong self-score, you will not have a need to take from others. You will not have a need to put others down. You will not have a need to be infatuated by someone else or to use someone else for your to prop yourself up, right? If you have good self-worth, you will, in my opinion, you won't feed off other people, and you won't like boost your self-esteem by hurting other people. So that's the first thing. Second thing, when you're in a relationship, if your household is calm and good, your kids will grow up more healthy, emotionally healthy. You'll be more emotionally healthy at work. You'll be more emotionally healthy all around towards your parents, siblings, whatever. So it starts within the household, right? And then finally, I find that a lot of people don't know when it's time to quit a relationship because there's a mortgage, there's kids, there's all of that. This framework for sure is about understanding yourself, knowing how you'll connect with someone, but there is such a big fear right now about what's going to happen if I leave this marriage. And for men, it's the number one reason for suicide. For women, there's a fear of, oh my God, that pool of daters suck. Like, what am I going to do? Okay. This is also to give you confidence if you are thinking that something is not right for you. If you are doing the formula and the partner score is minus to you substantially, and you're doing it over and over and over again, so it should not be a one time thing, right? You want to make sure that you have the data and you see the pattern, but you do it over and over and over again, and you're always seeing the same results, right? And you've communicated your issue, by the way, not in a bullying way, but just in a way where it's like, hey, babe, husband, wife, whatever, this is what I need. And tell me what you need and let me help you, right? But if there's constant communication and the scores are just not a match, at some point, I think that it's okay to say I gave it what I could, and there might be something else that will be fulfilling, whether it's just you being by yourself or eventually partnering up with someone else. So we found actually from the analytics, just to give everyone some confidence here, if they're afraid to leave a relationship that's not working for them, okay? We found that the top scorers, self score of all of our group were the people who did the breakup. Okay, what that means is once they separated from their person, hope was not all lost. They still had very strong self score. They were working on themselves, it seems like, right? They had strong self worth. This is not to say that being in a relationship is not good because the second group, those were the people currently in the relationship. The three lowest groups of the self scores were the on and off ones, the mutual breakups, and the ones that were broken up with. Okay. But all to say, all hope is not lost if you are unfulfilled and you are afraid to leave. And I'm so sorry, but I feel like I especially want to speak to the women out there. Us women, like there is a fear of leaving a marriage because what does that mean for our reputation? What does that mean for our kids? What does that mean for our mortgage? What does that mean for our, independence, financial independence, and whatever? Just don't be scared. It might be tough, but don't be scared. Okay? And you can always use this formula to then prop yourself up with self-score and then eventually match with someone who might be good for you. Okay? So this was such a long way to answer your question in terms of what the goal is here. The goal is truly self-confidence and self-love. And if you have those two, the self-score, a strong self-score, everything else will fall into place. I sincerely believe that.
I love that message. That's so beautiful. And love that you spoke directly to women who are afraid to leave a relationship. And also, these women, they deal with beliefs and thoughts about whether they will find another match again. So that's wonderful that there is hope there. And another thing that I see a lot, especially in the dating world when it comes to women, is that we are all doing the work on ourselves. Like the majority of my clientele are women. We're all stepping up.
Hmm.
We're all starting to value ourselves more and see our own worth and learn how to set better boundaries. I would love your take on this. There seems to be this collective ideology that men are just not fitting the par anymore. They are not raising the bar. Well, the women are raising the bar, but the men are not meeting it. They are still kind of expecting women to be a certain way, or there's a lack of effort there. And there may be something in there where you said the majority of the dating pool are usually the on and offers, the ones who've been broken up with, and there's a lot of work there to be done around self-worth. But I would love if you have anything to say on that, about maybe an imbalance that may be starting to get created amongst the genders when it comes to finding a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
match.
it's fine. I actually mentioned this in the book too. I think that 50 years ago, things were very simple, right? Woman had a role, man had a role. Woman was more beta, more, self-sacrificing, man was the provider and all of that. Okay, clearly that's not working today. And now there's a huge shift in terms of understanding gender roles. So, for example, I'm old school, right? I love the gentleman. I just do. But I also know that I have friends who don't view it in that way, right? And view it more as like it should be equal and women should be whatever, right? And I don't disagree with that either. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a businesswoman. You know what I mean? I believe that women clearly should have their voice and their power and all of that. But I love a gentleman. And that's the thing. Like,
We want it all.
I just want it all, exactly. But see, so it gets confusing. It gets very confusing. It's like, well, what do you want? Like, do you want to feel good and strong, or do you want me to take care of you? So all to say, the values list and the traits list, they're very unique and it'll depend on the person, right? It's a very nuanced time right now in terms of what a man really means, because 50 years ago, men were manly, you know what I mean? What they say would go, and they were the providers and everything. But it's not like that anymore. Now, dual income is extremely important because things are so expensive, right? Now, women expect for men, rightfully so, in my opinion, to take part in like the household chores and taking care of, the kids and everything, right? So, where do we not draw the line, but what is the answer, essentially, is what I mean to say. And in my opinion, the answer just depends on the person, because it's a very nuanced time and a very nuanced definition right now in terms of gender roles, right? It just depends. Yeah. I can,
Yeah.
so it's funny. Okay, I had mentioned this. I can't remember if I left it in the book or took it out, but even Destiny's Child, they have one song, Independent Women, and I'm pretty sure in the same album it was Can You Pay My Bills? Bills, 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 right? Look at that confusion. We don't know what we want. We want our cake and to eat it too. So it depends where you stand, and like the generation depends on where you stand in terms of what feels right to you, right? And yeah, same thing with men, by the way. Some men just don't
Yeah.
want to hold doors. They're like, no, like you're a strong woman, you can do it yourself, and that's their prerogative. If they can find a match, then that's great.
it sounds like at the end of the day, this is a tool that can be used for us to find someone who is aligned, whatever that looks like. If we want a gentleman that opens doors, or we want a gentleman that's out making all the money, or at home looking after the kids while you're out making money, I guess everybody is looking for someone who, yeah, fits their, not just their values, but their vision as
Mhm.
well, right? Of how they want their relationship to look like and how they want their lives to look like. And oh, dating is a very complex world out
Mhm.
there right now, and it can be tough. But if we have tools like what Zoe is offering us, we can take back a little bit more of, dare I say, control, because yes, control is an illusion, but sometimes it can feel like it is out of our control,
Mhm.
when actually we're probably more in control than we like to think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe attraction is difficult to control, but you still have a decision whether you want to move forward or not. And also, it's very possible that you'll like someone and they'll like you too, but you guys still don't understand each other. Like if you're also the type where you just enjoy, gentlemanly whatever, don't like let them guess. Just say it. Just say it. Like, and don't do it in a way where it's demanding, by the way, right? But in a way where it's like, I love a gentleman. You know what I mean? That'll spark something in their minds. It's like, okay, well, let me be there for her in the way that she wants it. And he will try to raise his score in your eyes, right? Hopefully, it won't be performative and it'll be long lasting, right? If that's what you want, right? But all to say, if you have a certain set of values, whether it's family, communication, dependability, which is another word for being a rock, gentleman, right? A finance, career, all of that. It's okay to kind of pepper it into conversations just so they understand what your standards are. But also keep in mind that you yourself also have to meet your own standards. If you're approaching a date with low self worth, very easily you'll pop right into an anxious attachment style. Very easily. So you have to work on that.
And they'll feel that energy.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you are, unfortunately, I'm working with a client right now who's extremely anxiously attached. And what tends to happen when you present so physically anxious is that you start to attract narcissists, and they can see that low self worth in you and they feed off it, and they will continue to chip away at what is left of your self-worth, and then before you know it, you're trapped in that relationship. I have one last question before
Sure.
we find out more about where you can find your work, and that is, I'm curious to know what you think. Can compatibility be created,
Mhm. Yeah,
or is it set in stone?
I think so. My husband, my current husband, at the beginning, I don't know that he totally fit my type. But I gave it time. I gave it time. So it was more he was scoring less in the traits, but he was scoring solid in the values. But because I knew I had a bad pattern myself in terms of the men I was attracting, I told myself just wait. Even if he doesn't fit the traits right now, he might eventually. And he did. He did. So eventually he started scoring high in humor. Eventually I saw the deeper layers of his intelligence. I also removed a couple trait preferences that I used to have that I no longer had, which is age, because I used to date older. And then with Kevin, I decided, why do I need that as a trait preference? And also, usually like a cultural background, same as me, right? And then I was thinking, I grew up in Canada. Why do I need that? I live in, SoCal. Like, no, I that needs to be removed. So Kevin younger and also Caucasian male, and eventually we started laughing together and everything. So eventually the scores did balance, right? I gave it time and I let the attraction grow and I opened my mind and I also gained the self-awareness that my trait preferences were not necessarily conducive to healthy relationships. I thought they were neutral initially, but then with enough bad relationships and poor patterns, I'm like, okay, I don't need this. Like I just don't need it, you know?
Okay, I'm really glad I asked that question, because
Yeah.
thank you for giving that insight, because
No
it's like
worries.
I can almost see, some people being like, right, I'm going to use this tool and it's going to be really black and white. And if it doesn't match, it's a write off,
Yeah,
where
you're totally
actually
right. Mhm. You're totally right.
it's
I
like,
should have
okay,
talked about that. Yeah. So actually, let me just quickly touch on that because you're making such a good point. Um, For me, because I was falling into the extreme emotional, whatever, anxious attachment style, I told myself no more. I don't want to fall into something where I'm completely out of control. So Kevin initially did not fit my trait preferences. It was very much a slow burn, but he was dependable. He had all the values score, or like a high value score. And it's not like his trait score was zero, by the way, right? It's just not what I was like, oh, this is what I want. And I need that spark and I need those butterflies constantly, blah, blah, blah. I told myself I actually don't need that. It's not safe. It's emotional dysregulation. And I don't want to fall within that. Do you know why? Because I care about my work and I want to show up and focus on my work and not loop about someone else, right? That's not healthy. So, because with Kevin, I'm like, well, I'm attracted, right? But it's not that like super high standard that I've given myself. Let me just chill out. And I did chill out. And then eventually, as I chilled out, like I said, the deeper layers started coming out, and then the attraction grew, but in a very healthy way, not in a way, like I said, that was emotionally dysregulated. So over time, I'm like, okay, this is safe, this is stable, this is a rock, this is dependable and reliable. So we got engaged, we got married, and here we are 2 years later.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you give that insight because, yeah, we can sometimes go from 0 to 1,000 of just cutting people off because they're not the perfect match.
Yeah.
And actually, what I'm hearing from your story, Zoe, is it actually allowed you to reflect on some of the traits that you thought were important, but actually, when you thought really thought about it, and you started to question, you started to get curious. Why is it important? Is it important anymore? Because we're always shifting, we're always
Exactly.
changing. And I think it's really good reflection tool. But then also, yeah, to just let's normalize the slow burn.
Yeah,
Let's normalize of
absolutely.
being able to just give things some time. We're not in a rush. It doesn't need to happen overnight. We can grow together in compatibility as well. It doesn't have to be something that is either there or not, that you do
Exactly.
get to give relationships time. I
Exactly.
really want to normalize that because
Exactly.
we do tend to think that we have to feel that initial spark right away when we're not used to the slow burn. We've romanticized romance to be this like explosive experience when actually a lot of the healthy relationships that I've been in and I'm around, like the people that I'm around, most of them, I would say 95% of them have been slow burners.
Exactly. Exactly. Because if it's too disruptive from the get-go, that means you're going to loop, that means you're going to become anxious, and yeah, then it'll break down and it will disrupt.
Absolutely. All right, Zoe. So the listeners are listening. They're excited. They want to use your tool. They're like, where can I get my hands on it? How can I use it? So can you give us an insight? Like, take a step by step. I'm ready. I'm ready to use the tool. How do I do it?
Okay, well, you can purchase the book. So the book is on Amazon and it's called Love Can in Fact Be Calculated. Or you can hop on Barnes and Noble website and purchase it there if you want. You can also check out my website. The website is lovecaninfactbecalculated.com. And if you want, you can review the analytics and learn more about that. Beyond that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me if you want to be coached through a stronger self score and kind of reducing the attachment style, anxious style, and work through that and work through past breakups if you want, or work through, how to find the right partner.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zoe, for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your book. I
Thank you.
really feel like this is groundbreaking.
Thank
And
you.
like, kudos to you for coming out here on a mission, like redefining how we see love, because I really resonate with everything that you've been saying
Thank
in this conversation with me of, yeah, we do need to approach it in a different way in order to get matches that are going to leave us feeling content, fulfilled, not anxious, not spiraling. And like you said, love really is the foundation of life.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what is life without love? And I think a lot of us out here are really just trying to get it right. We're
I
just
get
that's
it.
we're just trying to do our freaking best here
I
and
get it.
get it right. So I think your tool is going to be so helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samantha. I really enjoyed this chat and I hope it was helpful and insightful. So thank you.
Absolutely. And like Zoe said, check out her book, and she has a ton of other offerings on her website as well. And let us know how you get on as well with the formula. I'm sure we would love to hear how you get on with that. All right. Until next time, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. And I'm sending you all the love and light. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode on the Relationship Rehab podcast. If you really enjoyed this episode, it would really mean a lot to me if you was to share this episode with a friend who really needs to hear what has been talked about today, and also to rate and review this podcast. Hit that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss any new episodes coming out. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode.